At a recent campaign rally for Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez put the final nail in the coffin for the Democrats' call for complete open borders. Now, for the longest time, conservatives and some moderates have been pointing out the Democrats are for open borders, but the response from the left has always been, that's not true, it's a mischaracterization. Nobody wants open borders where people can do whatever they want. We heard from Democrats, they're going to decriminalize border crossings. We heard they wanted to put a moratorium on all deportations. We heard they wanted to abolish ICE. So sane, rational Americans said that sounds like open borders, but they argued not true at all. Because people still can't just freely come across the border. I mean, let's be real. Trump's got a border wall there. And you've got people taking passports and stamping them and checking people as they come in. Except now, Ocasio-Cortez has stated, not only does she not want to reform ICE, she also doesn't want to reform Customs and Border Protection. She wants them broken up, and Bernie Sanders has pledged to do so. Do you know what CBP does? Like when you go to the border at like a border station and you like walk up and say, hey, I'm coming to visit America, and they stamp your passport. That's what they do. Ocasio-Cortez wants to get rid of that organization. Okay, so what's left? Just people walking through the building? There's no one there to stop you? Well, that's what happens if you get rid of CBP. We've also heard from people like Beto O'Rourke. I know he's kind of gone, but he did say he wanted to tear down Donald Trump's wall. Well, recently Bernie Sanders was asked if he would do that too, and Bernie Sanders said, maybe. Now, to be fair, Bernie did say, if it's expensive, we'll put the money to better use. Let's think about that. No wall, no criminal penalty, no deportation, not even a Customs and Border Protection. So let me just say this. At the end of the day, you can argue anything you want. But the moment Ocasio-Cortez said no Customs and Border Protection, literally no law enforcement personnel at all at the border. Okay, yeah, that's open borders. I'm done playing games, okay? I'm not going to play this argument anymore where simply because AOC didn't use the words open borders, she must not really mean that. Nah, she did. Here's what we're going to do. Let's go through the news and see exactly what happened. Before we do, however, make sure you go to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But of course, the best thing you can do, share this video, grab that link, drop it somewhere, click that share button. If you really want to help my channel grow, it's really the best way to do it. And maybe we can break some echo chamber bubbles if you share this with somebody who might actually disagree. Now, I understand most people just would refuse to watch it because they're going to play the same old argument we hear from the media and Democrats all the time. The Democrats have never said open borders. It's a Donald Trump lie. I'm going to show you definitively why they did. By their own argument of what open borders really would be, Ocasio-Cortez has now called for it and stated Bernie Sanders is pledging to bring that to us. The story from Fox News. AOC bashes ICE. Sanders bashes Trump during Iowa rally. They say, U.S. Rep. Ocasio-Cortez urged supporters of 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders on Saturday night to start tipping people off if they see federal immigration authorities taking action against illegal immigrants in their communities. It was just one of many tips the New York Democrat had for a crowd in Ames, Iowa, as she continued stumping for Sanders ahead of the state's presidential caucuses on February 3rd. Now, I can stop right now and say, if you've got law enforcement trying to enforce our laws and a federal politician is telling people to subvert our law enforcement agencies, you've already got a serious problem. Many people would take that statement as alone, saying she must be for open borders if she wants people to come here without consequence, right? If people cross the border illegally and then you say, don't let law enforcement come after them, well, that's open borders, right? Well, they argue no. The Democrats say, no. Open borders would be no security, no border crossing at all, no fence of any kind. All right, okay, let's go there. Let's go there. They say, unlike a Friday night event in Iowa City, in which Ocasio-Cortez promoted progressive causes like the Green New Deal, government-funded healthcare and immigration reform, but never mentioned the name of Sanders, who is absent because of the Senate impeachment trial duties in Washington, the 30-year-old freshman congresswoman on Saturday, with the 78-year-old Sanders now in attendance, reminded the crowd who she supported. Quote, "We need a true Green New Deal in this country," she said. "Senator Sanders has the largest plan in the field to address the climate crisis. I'm here because we need true immigration justice. And I'm not here to reform some of these systems when we talk about immigration. I'm here because Senator Sanders has truly committed to breaking up ICE and Customs and Border Protection." Let me go back. They say 78-year-old Sanders now in attendance. Bernie Sanders was there with AOC when she said Bernie has committed to breaking up ICE and CBP, breaking them up. Okay, let's play some semantics games. What does it mean to really break them up? Well, at first I was thinking maybe she means like turn them into smaller agencies and strip them of their authority. Yeah, no, she said, I'm not here to reform some of these systems when we talk about immigration. I'm here because Sanders has committed to breaking up ICE and CBP. If you start that statement by saying you do not want reform, it doesn't sound like she wants to limit their powers or reform the agencies and break them up. It sounds like she's trying to abolish them outright. And guess what? AOC and her allies literally say abolish ICE. If she is lumping Customs and Border Protection into that same sentence, okay, what else am I supposed to believe other than she is saying, you know, those people at the border who stamp your passport, we're going to just get rid of all of them. She doesn't want to reform that. She wants people to literally just walk across the border, I guess. Do you know what CBP does? They do a lot of things. They don't just deal with, checking people as they cross the border. You land in an airplane, you're like walking up to immigration. Yeah, CBP's there. They check your passport. You want to get rid of all that? That means people can fly here from any country and they literally just walk in. We've got a Wuhan coronavirus crisis going on with people freaking out. And you want to get rid of border security? Sorry, that's open borders. But you know what? Let me play the game with y'all. Check out this story from the Daily Beast back in July of 2019. Democrats must destroy Trump's open borders myth. No one wants to just let everyone just walk in. Now, a few Democrats are finally offering credible ideas about how to move past that fake choice. I love it. Now, I know this is one article. It's one guy's opinion. But I got to be honest, I saw a ton of articles all with the same or a very similar opinion that simply because they want immigration reform or amnesty, it's not open borders. Now, they give us their definition of what open borders really is, and you're going to love it. He says, what's the definition of open borders? It's just a buzz phrase to rile people up who want to get rid of illegal immigrants, cut back on legal immigrants, and make America white again. It's the new weapon of choice, replacing the tired out zinger of the 1990s, amnesty. Take the leader who recently called me. I'm not going to read that part. Let's go down. He says, here's how I define, quote, open borders. For me, open means open. There would be no guards, no fencing, and no impediments of any kind. Anyone who wants to cross the international boundary for any reason, and with whatever intent, could do so. It would be like it was before May 28th, 1924, the date that the U.S. Border Patrol was formed. Come one, come all. That would be insanity. And that's why no one's calling for it. You know what, man? You are so right. That would be insanity. No guards and no fencing. Hey, wait a minute. Didn't Ocasio Cortez just say Sanders is committed to breaking up Customs and Border Protection? Who would be left? There's not going to be any guards at the border. Okay. Well, hold on. We still do have fencing. Trump is building a wall. So we haven't quite met the criteria for what he's talking about. All right, well, how about this? Sanders floats moratorium on 90% of deportations, demolition of border wall. Oh, well, how about Beto O'Rourke? Now, I know. Beto O'Rourke's long gone. The dude's sitting around in sweatpants growing a 5 o'clock shadow, and he's not particularly relevant. But how is it that before you claimed, okay, so let me show you something. This guy said, let me show you the date here. July 15th, 2019. No fencing, no guards. Beto O'Rourke, February 14th, 2019. Beto says he would take the wall down, separating El Paso and Mexico. Beto O'Rourke called for tearing down Donald Trump's wall. So now let's check off those boxes, all right? You've got no guards, thanks AOC and Bernie Sanders. You've got no fencing, thanks Beto O'Rourke. And I think it's fair to criticize Bernie on this one, though I do think it's more fair to say Bernie said he'd rather spend the money on childcare and more important things. That's fair. But you do have contemplation and discussion about the removal of guards, the removal of impediments, border fencing or otherwise. You have the decriminalization of the crossing, meaning people literally could just cross for whatever reason, and a moratorium on deportation. Congratulations. You now have anyone from anywhere flying in, walking in. That's open borders, dude. I'm sorry. There's no arguing at this point. You tried debunking it, Daily Beast, by saying there would be no guards. What did they say? Let me get it perfectly again. He says, here's how I define open borders. No guards, no fencing, no impediments. Congratulations. We're officially there. Now, I find it really annoying that they're saying just because AOC and Bernie didn't use the phrase open borders, that they're not really calling for open borders. Sorry, they are. And, they've tried it over and over, but here's what I want to show you real quick, because I do have some other really important things that I want to talk about as it relates to this and why I think this is the Democrats. Let me show you this first. I'm not going to use the Daily Beast definition, okay? Because now they're going to come back and say, Tim, you're just using one guy's definition, and that's not how I define open borders. Okay, let's go to Wikipedia. Oh, but you say Wikipedia is not a good... No, stop. Wikipedia has a consensus. It's much better than me pulling up 800 articles from all of these liberal writers trying to define what open borders is. Let's just go to Wikipedia, which should be a more neutral, if in reality kind of left-leaning, but a more neutral assessment. They say open border. An open border is a border that enables free movement of people, and often goods, between jurisdictions with few or no restrictions on movement that is lacking substantive border control. Okay. By the actual definition, you could have CBP and still have open borders because few or no restrictions. Few restrictions. What AOC is proposing and saying Bernie Sanders has pledged to do would be the complete removal of any and all restrictions. Breaking up CBP and no reform. You know what that means? It means when someone comes to the border, there's no one there to stop them from doing literally anything. They can just walk on in. Now, I want to show you something. I think it's fair to say that, let me throw it to Andrew Yang. I like Andrew Yang. I do. Back in August, Yang said it's a mischaracterization to say Democrats are for open borders. I do believe it is fair to highlight this sentiment from Andrew Yang. But what we're really seeing here, and I will show you in the next article, is that there's no real Democratic Party anymore. There are just Democrats. They have no unifying principles. They don't believe the same things. They're arguing such wild positions, abolishing private healthcare or keeping private healthcare. That's a ridiculous choice. You'd think if there was a Democratic Party, they would be unified around what they wanted to do with healthcare. But from abolishing to keeping, that's like a wide extreme. You know what I mean? Like you could say, I think private healthcare should be cheaper. I think private healthcare should be, more accessible. That's a difference in a party, not get rid of ICE and CBP or don't. That's nuts. But Andrew Yang said, I think it's mischaracterizing the position of just about every Democrat to say that someone is for open borders. I know I am very cognizant of the fact that we need to have more resources in place to secure our borders and enforce our rules as they're written. The open borders attack to me is simply a mischaracterization, certainly of the point of view of most Democrats I've heard them express. Okay. Yang, I think you were perhaps right back then to a certain degree. I think what we're really seeing is that Yang Democrats are very, very different from what the Democratic Party is actually moving towards. As I mentioned earlier, Bernie Sanders has become the front runner in many polls. Ocasio Cortez has 6 million plus followers on Twitter. I know Twitter isn't a great metric, but listen, she's certainly one of the most newsworthy Democrats and one of the most influential. So I'll tell you this. I'm a big fan of Andrew Yang, but Yang's wrong on this one. I agree with Yang when he says we need more resources in place to secure our borders and enforce our rules. You're spot on, Yang. It's one of the reasons I like you. I'm sorry, though. Bernie Sanders and AOC just said they're pledging to get rid of customs and border protection. Okay? Let me be careful. They want to break them up. Interpret that however you want. But when she says, I don't want to reform them, I want to break them up, it sounds to me like she's saying get rid of them because she often says abolish ICE. So if she's putting them in the same category, you can play semantics, you can play with words, but I think we're all seeing this. Now let me bring you back to reality. January 25th, 2020. Sanders tops another poll just before the Iowa caucus. And there you have it. Bernie Sanders is in the front, and his position is now becoming the majority position or the largest single faction. I get it. You can look at Biden and Buttigieg and Klobuchar and see that even though their support is in lower double digits, together it's much bigger than Bernie Sanders alone. That's not how the primary is going to work, though. Bernie Sanders has the largest single voting bloc, the far left woke identity progressives who want to abolish ICE and want to open borders. Well, I got bad news for Democrats. I've seen this. I've seen how this plays out. I saw how it played out in Egypt. I'll tell you what's going to happen. The Democrats are split between so many different factions. There's no real the Democrats. The woke far left are at such odds that Andrew Yang says Democrats don't want what they're clearly saying they do. Bernie Sanders getting around 27% in some polls. Joe Biden, 21, Buttigieg, in the teens, Klobuchar in the single digits. Let me tell you what happens. Bernie Sanders will win the primary because he has the single largest group of voters. Even though 30% of the Democratic primary voters would say we like Bernie, and 70% would say we don't, Bernie gets the nomination. What do you think happens then when you have 50 or so percent of the Democratic Party saying we don't want open borders? They're going to vote for Donald Trump. You see how this works? Because of the way first past the post voting works, it's basically one person, one vote. Even in the Democratic primary, Bernie Sanders has a minority support, 27 or so percent. That is nowhere near the majority of the Democratic voters. But because there are so many centrists in the field, or I shouldn't say centrist, but more like moderate Democrat types like Buttigieg, Biden, Klobuchar, you get the point. They're split, meaning Bernie's going to win. Bernie will win because of the split. The ideological far left will take the primary and moderate voters will bow out. But let's talk about what's really going on. Well, actually, before I do, I want to make sure I show you this. He has made wild shifts. How Bernie Sanders has changed his approach to immigration. This is from BuzzFeed News. BuzzFeed News wrote an article only about a week ago talking about how Bernie Sanders is very much reformed on immigration because he used to be for border security. Now he's not. And this is just more evidence when BuzzFeed News and other leftist sites are willing to praise Bernie on immigration. And AOC will say with him at his rally, he wants to get rid of the guards at the border. That's basically what she said. Call it hyperbolic, call it whatever you want. That's what she said. No reform, break them up. I get it. I get where you're going. But I want to talk about what we're really seeing. In this story from Fox News, Dan Crenshaw blasts Pandering by Sanders and Warren, the definition of buying votes. Well, let me stop. What Crenshaw's talking about is student debt forgiveness, for the most part. You promise to give a millennial voter 50 grand, like Elizabeth Warren is, yeah, they're probably going to vote for you. Could you see this? Elizabeth Warren says she's going to forgive $50,000 in debt. Yeah, okay. And I'll throw the same shit at Yang, even though I really do like Yang for a lot of reasons. Offering up $1,000 a month to everybody, it's like, well, there was that quote from that, I don't know, guy, is an American history guy. He said that our country is in danger, will face serious danger the moment politicians realize they can just buy votes by essentially promising up public resources, levying taxes, and then giving that money to people. What Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are doing with the student debt forgiveness they've proposed, in my opinion, is hardcore pandering to buy votes. Because let me tell you the real solution. There is no solution involving just giving people $50,000. You took out a loan? Well, we're going to just wipe that debt clean. But you got to spend that money. You got a degree for it. That degree doesn't go away. You don't refund the degree. What we really should do, in my opinion, is eliminate the interest rates and make the college students pay down their principal. You got to pay back every penny you spent, but we're not going to let it grow on you and become impossible to pay down. That's one of the big challenges. So that there's a real compromise there. I think it makes sense to offer up some kind of alleviation to student debt so we can get millennials back to, say, buying houses or having families. But what Bernie and Warren are doing is basically telling college students or now college graduates, hey, man, we're going to give you 50 grand. It's pandering. So I looked to the comments about CBP and ICE, and I'll tell you exactly what it's all about. Let me read you the story from the National Review. They say, when asked whether he would support tearing down the wall, Sanders responded, I don't know. Maybe the answer is yes. If it's going to cost me billions of dollars to tear it down, maybe the money would be better spent on childcare in this country. That's a really great point, actually. So I want to be fair to Bernie. He's saying, we might as well spend the money on other things. Yeah, I said the same thing about Beto O'Rourke. Why would you waste money doing that? Let's read on. He says, if someone has been convicted of a terrible, terrible crime, that might be an exception to the rule. A moratorium on 99% of deportations is nothing to sniff at, and I think the undocumented community would be very proud of that. Whoa, wait, what? The undocumented community would be very proud of that. This is where things start getting a little weird, in my opinion. What do you mean the undocumented community? Like, I understand there are people in this country who are here illegally without documentation, but why should the president of the United States be trying to win favor with people who are not here legally, who are not a part of our system, and can't vote? You see, a lot of Democrats have actually campaigned in Mexico. I'm not exaggerating. Like Beto O'Rourke went down there. There's some other people. Jill Biden was down there. And I have to wonder why. What is the point of campaigning in a country that is not America if you want to be the president of the United States? Look, you want to run for some kind of like international, I don't know, figure of some sort, go work for the UN or something like that, fine. You want to be an ambassador to a foreign country, by all means, go and do it. You want to earn favor with people who are in a country that's not yours, more power to you. But why should they be trying to court favor with the undocumented community? That's weird. I think it's just another sign of pandering. But when we can see them offering up cash to college students for debt forgiveness, straight up forgiveness, that's insane, by the way. We do, like, I'm totally for some kind of debt forgiveness, but not just an outright check for 50 grand. But then we see this. If they're trying to pander for votes, as Dan Crenshaw says, what votes are they pandering to by helping the undocumented community? They would be very proud of that, Bernie Sanders said. Why are our politicians campaigning for people who aren't citizens of our country? Why should we as a community be opening up the doors to those who break the rules? Let me break this down for you. America is an elite club. We're very wealthy. It's very comfortable here. But you know what? It's not an elite. It's not a club that's hard to get into. America lets in more migrants than basically any other country. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. Fact check me. But I'm pretty sure America has like the biggest net immigration for like any country. So we certainly have this open door. The only problem is you got to wait in line because everybody wants to come in. Well, undocumented immigrants are line jumpers. They're snaking everybody else to get a piece of the pie. And we're more than willing to offer up that piece of that pie. You just got to come in through the doors, okay? What Bernie is saying right now is if you cheated, we're going to hook you up. Cheaters win, right? What they're saying on college debt is if you saved money and worked hard or worked your way through college, you get nothing. But if you took out a loan and made someone else pay for it, don't worry, you don't got to pay it back because cheaters win. That's what they're offering up. So here we are. I'll wrap it up here. That's it. They really are. They've really crossed that threshold to now beyond a reasonable, any reasonable person's position. They're calling for open borders. Let me reiterate. Ocasio Cortez said no more CBP. That means when you walk to the American border, you will see an empty building and people will just be walking in and out as if there's nothing there at all. There's a reason why we have border protections. Let me show you. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is the largest federal law enforcement agency of the Department of Homeland Security and is the country's primary border control organization. It is charged with regulating and facilitating international trade, collecting import duties, enforcing U.S. regulations, including trade, customs, and immigration. CBP is one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the United States. It has a workforce of more than 45,600 sworn federal agents and officers headquartered in D.C. Let me stop. First, breaking up CBP with no reform. You're talking about eliminating nearly 50,000 jobs overnight. That's worrisome for the economy. But they regulate trade and customs and regulations. You know what that means? I don't know. If someone's trying to smuggle a product that's defective or toxic or poisonous into the U.S., yet they stop them from doing it. It's the craziest thing to me that when they talk about abolishing ICE, they focus on this tiny subset of what the organization actually does. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement goes after criminals for the most part. They don't prioritize hunting down like a dude who works at a chicken factory. Sometimes they do arrest them, but their priority is always egregious offenses, criminals. Yet for some reason, AOC would have you believe they're like chasing kids down the street. You know, they do that too, okay, to be extreme, like they do chase young people who are here illegally, and they'll arrest them for it because they're here illegally. But that's not the primary, priority of what they're doing. In the end, what I'm really trying to get at, CBP does so much more than stamp your passport. They make sure drugs and poison and criminals aren't coming across the border and hurting people and trafficking people. They want to get rid of all that. That's open borders. They've said it. So by their own definition of what truly constitutes open borders, congratulations, AOC, you've brought us there. Can we stop arguing whether they're for it or not? They literally are. Well, whatever, I guess. They're going. You know for sure the left is going to come out and say, no. Eliminating CBP isn't open borders. There would just be no guards and no fencing, but we would still track people. Okay, you know what? I'm over it. I'm done playing these games. We get it. Y'all want open borders. I think it's a terrible idea, and most Americans probably do too, because even Andrew Yang was saying, no, we don't want that. Sorry, Yang. There's a large faction on your side, on our side, saying it's true. And you got to point to it and call it out if you want it to, not be a thing. Let's stop pretending that these Democrats let's stop acting like they're not calling for it. They are. Yang isn't. I get it. Though Yang, I believe he was one of the people who raised his hand for giving government healthcare to non-citizens. I think it's fair to say it exists. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews. And I will see you all then.